Hello, my name is Corey, and this is, if you're watching on YouTube, we did a whole bunch of stuff beforehand, which was a bunch of tech BS, but things are fixed now. I'm going to be doing a read-through. This is going to be more chill than the other ones because for me it's a Sunday evening. There should be some nice music playing, and we are just going to, I think it's switching songs. Maybe? I don't know. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So if you are curious, I've been looking at Torchbearer in previous videos. Those are there and available. And I just wanted to keep going through, see where we get. We'll do a bit more of a relaxed one, a relaxed read through this time. So, what do we have going on? So this is the inventory system. We leave town with full packs and full bellies, thinking that we have all the tools we need to get the job done. But then the plan takes longer than expected, food runs out, gear breaks, and we wish we packed that one extra item. So Torchbearer is a game about inventory management. Let's go look at, there we go. I got Roll20 set up for us this time, so we can take a look at the character sheets as we go. And yeah, we'll just sort of see what happens. This is the inventory system in Roll20. It's kind of like Diablo, if you're familiar with that inventory system. You have your different slots and things can go into those slots, and you do want to track every bit and piece. Like, this is a game where it's like, yes, track what you're wearing and where you're wearing it, kind of thing. Let's hop back up here though. So you have 6 inventory locations: head, neck, hands, torso, belt, and feet. Just talks about what we saw on the character sheet. Carried items are held in one or both hands. Wield is a special designation for weapons that indicate how many hands are required to use the weapon in combat. Carried 4 indicates that you need 2 or more people to lift the item in question. Carried items can be packed away, but it might have different inventory requirements. Worn items can go around your neck, on the head, hands, torso, legs, or feet. And then pack items can go in your different backpacks, pouches, sacks, satchels, or on your belt. An item listed as belt 1, for example, can be attached to your belt. Some items require more than one spot. For example, you can have carried 1 or packed 2. It requires 2 slots in your sack, satchel, or backpack, but only 1 hand to carry. Some items can be bundled, like 4 torches can go into 1. And then there's worn items. For example, leather armor requires 1 torso slot, but plate armor requires 2. Okay, so pretty straightforward, I would say. Let's take a look at the character sheet again. So we have our different slots and different things can go into them. Pretty straightforward. I'm curious to see how this comes up in gameplay. Like, this is definitely the part of the game where if you're doing character creation and you're interested in a lighter game, you might get to this part and lose interest really quick. Although on the flip side, if you're a person who wants to dive into a crunchy game, this is probably where you're starting to get pretty excited. All depends on what you're interested in. And then there's containers. Okay, I don't really care too much about the containers. Sacks within sacks, we don't care about that. Weapons. Let's see what happens with weapons. In order to use a weapon for combat, you have to have the requisite hands to wield it. Otherwise, you're just holding on to it. The Game Master can steal stuff from your pocket. That's kind of fun. So a pocket is where you can store stuff, but it might get taken. It looks like you have a cache. Okay. Pretty straightforward. I'm not going to dive into some of these details because I don't care to. But you have your inventory slots and you can put stuff in them. As far as the inventory system goes, we assume that you're carrying around 40 pounds of junk in addition to your adventuring gear. So things like pots for cooking, shovel for digging, paper for writing. You don't have to worry about listing them. That's nice. So the slots on your inventory are for the things that you actually have to track. You don't track everything. You just track the important things. Which, so far, I like the sound of that. If you want to carry more stuff, you have to do the factors in a laborer skill test. Otherwise, the Game Master can apply a twister condition. Okay. Oh, that's it. That's it. That's all there is for inventory. I thought this chapter was going to have the list of items, but I think we actually already went over that in character creation. That's inventory then. That was quicker than I thought. Let us continue on to Arcana. Let us learn how magic works in this world. So there's two pieces sort of in the supernatural part for Torchbearer. We have our Arcana and our Third G. Your magical stuff and your holy stuff. Arcane and holy, rather. Let's see. Okay. Magic in the world of Torchbearer consists of drawing forth mystical substance from the ethereal plane and shaping it with the caster's will. The spells themselves are slippery, almost living things that must be wrestled into submission, caged within the prison of the caster's mind. When casting, an arcanist uses a series of words and gestures to release the spell in question. Once cast, the spell bursts forth and may not be used again until the caster has time to study the formula and trap the spell once more in their mind. So this is a very Vancian. This is a very, very Vancian system. We have the Memory Palace. And then it goes into some of the details. So the gist behind a Vancian system, for anyone who's watching but is not familiar, if you're familiar then this will be old news. Essentially you prepare spells into slots, much like an inventory system, and then once you use it, it leaves that inventory and you have to add it back in to use it again. So it's not like in a lot of movies where you do the same spell over and over and over again, or different spells for the different situations, but you get to repeat them. It's like you get it, you do it, and away you go. So first circle spell requires 1 slot, while third circle spell requires 3. That's nice. That's simple. If you want to refill your memory palace, you need uninterrupted time in camp or town to review the formulae. So you can make a lore master test with the obstacle equal to the sum of the circles you wish to memorize. Add +1 ob for each spell in your memory palace. Okay. Memorizing spell costs a check in camp. So remember from earlier, checks are what you get. It's a resource you earn when your traits are used in a way that is cumbersome or hindering to you. In town, memorization is free if you book a room at a flop house, inn, or hotel, or if you stay with a relationship. Otherwise, it counts as personal business and increases your lifestyle cost by 1. Let's see the example. The examples are like the important part for me because that's where I actually get the information. The details, whatever. In camp, Luke decides that his magician, Samus, will memorize celestial music, first circle, and rhyme of opening, second circle. During a previous camp, Samus memorized Wisdom of the Sages but never cast it, so it remains in his memory palace. Adding the 2 new spells to Samus's memory palace requires an odd forlorn master test. Luke fails this roll, of course, because that's how you do in this system. Thor decides that while he manages to cram the spells into his head, Samus's exertions make him exhausted. Magicians may not take watch in camp and memorize spells. If you need to memorize, someone else needs to take watch. You can remove spells from your memory palace in 3 ways: casting them, scribing the spell as a scroll, or Temerious Discharge. Well, 2 of those are kind of descriptive. One of them seems new and interesting. Let's read let's read this in order. The magician unbinds all spells stored in the memory palace, seeking to channel the energies through the body and hopefully harmlessly into the ether. To do so without ill effect, the magician must pass a will test with an obstacle equal to the sum of the circles discharged. So 4 circles, odd 4 will. Temerious Discharge does not require a turn or cost a check. Casting a spell without purpose triggers a Temerious Discharge. This is fun. In a lot of advancing systems, your magic, you only care about bringing it in. But in Torchbearer, everything counts. So getting rid of magic is also a thing that you have to do, right? Every choice you make in this game makes a difference. So that's interesting. As far as the example goes, Samus needs to memorize the sign of abrogation, 3rd circle, to break a spell on one of his companions. He has 3 spell slots in his memory palace, but they're currently filled with celestial music and somnific trance. Samus's player, Luke, elects to discharge the spells. The spells circle sum to 3. So Luke must pass an Ob 3 will test to safely discharge the spells and make room for the sign of abrogation. Some of the suggested failures can include etheric burns, you become injured. There's a twist of unwanted summonings, random spell effects, or a hole burned in space and time. Very dangerous. Very dangerous. Spell libraries. How much do I want to get into spell libraries? Let's skim. So you have your library. If an enemy gets into your library, they get an extra dice or success to any tests against you. That's cool. Due to the risks, Arcanists keep their libraries hidden, either in their hometowns or in their home base if they've established one. Mentors typically safeguard the libraries of young Arcanists until their apprentices are ready to establish their own bases. Your personal library contains copies of the 3 spells which you began your career and any you add later. When you visit your library, you can add new spells from your spell book. No test is required. This does not consume the spell from your spellbook. You can also copy scrolls into your library. We don't need to worry about loaner libraries. I'm going to skip that. Let's read about spell books. Each spellbook has 5 folios. A magician may only memorize spells that are in the spellbooks in their inventory. So this is really giving me the sense that your spells are still part of inventory management, which makes sense. Like, this game is about inventory management, so magic would be about that as well. And you need to go to where you have the spell to prepare it. Characters may carry more than one spellbook if they wish, so long as they have free space in their inventory. I did a little character sheet before for a magician. Spellbooks take up 2 slots, which is a lot, considering that you need all this other stuff with you, including like spell materials. So, I mean, you could bring multiple spellbooks, but that seems unlikely. So the spell circle determines how many folios it takes up. So a spellbook can hold 5, so you could have 5 level 1 circles, a 1/1/1 and a level 2, you know, whatever adds up to 5. This talks about how to go from library to spellbooks. I'm not going to worry about that. Casting from your spellbook. You may cast a spell directly from your spellbook without having it memorized. Interesting. So doing so consumes the spell as if it were a scroll. If the spell is in your library, you may recopy it into your spellbook when you visit the library, and you may also recopy the spell into your spellbook from a scroll. So you can, in a pinch, cast a spell from your spellbook. Then you just aren't able to put it back into your memory palace. So you've got layers here. You have your library, you have your spellbook, and then you have your memory palace. Okay, and then casting spells. We want to read this section. To cast a spell, an arcanist must have the spell memorized, have the ability to speak, and have the ability to gesture freely with a single empty hand. When arcanists cast a spell, it is removed from the memory palace until they have the opportunity to replenish it. There are 4 different ways to cast spells. Some have a fixed obstacle, some have factors, some trigger a versus test, and some of them will do a skill swap. If you have the materials for a spell, it will give you a +1 die. If you have a focus for the spell, which can be reused to get an extra dice, and you can use materials and focus to cast a spell. Some spells do not take a turn to cast, while some will take 1 or 2. Spells must be cast uninterrupted. If the magician or their helpers are disturbed, given a condition or are forced to test or swept up in a disruptive twist, the spell misfires and is lost. So you don't even get a chance. If your spell gets interrupted, she gone. The magician and all helpers must pass a will test to the obstacle equal to the sum of the spell circle in their memory palace. If they fail the test, abide by the rules for temerarious discharge. That would be pretty punishing. If you're in a dungeon and your spell gets interrupted and you accidentally let loose all of your spells. But it does give it a very strong sense of like, this is a thing which is alive in my head, this spell, and like they'll get out and, you know, get away on you. Which is cool. I like that. Oh. How's everyone doing so far? I do like the spell section. There's rules for helping, which makes sense. I really like assisted casting. When 2 or more arcanists work together to cast a spell, the time required to cast the spell increases by 1 turn. And using Wisest to aid a spell cast does not increase the casting time. There's not too much there. That's it. That's all there is. There are a handful of spells that are rather useful if you become embroiled in a conflict. So they can do some skill swapping. Spells that cost a turn to cast may not be used during a conflict. Spells cannot be disarmed by the maneuver action, so just some rules for conflicts. And then there's scrolls. Scrolls are single-use spells. Same rules. They take up 1 inventory slot. You can cast it from a scroll without having it memorized, and then the scroll is consumed. If you want to make scrolls, you have to have the spell memorized. You test your scholar skill, and it costs a check to do. Okay, so if you run into a unique situation in this game where you have extra time and you're just laying about, you could go do some extra spells. Enjoying this section a lot, says Matthew in the chat. Yeah. So this is going to talk to us about learning spells. To learn a spell from a scroll, spellbook, or library, we use the lore master obstacles from the spell. Okay. So when you find a scroll, there you go. Your mentor will give you new scrolls at 3rd, 5th, and 7th level. A friend or hired instructor can also teach you a new spell, which will bypass the need to make a separate lore master test to learn the spell. So here's an example spell. Ethereal Premonition. The caster sets an ethereal alarm in the other world to provide warning against approaching danger. This spell wards a camp, house, or the like, creating a sound like a ringing bell in the event of trouble. Take +1 to the camp events roll. Anyone who keeps watch gains +1 dice to test to avert disaster. Your focus can be a silver bell, which is Warn 1. If you want to scribe this, it's Ob 2 Scholar. If you want to learn it, it's Lore Master Ob 2. The casting depends on the factors, so we've got those down here, and the casting time is free, and it'll last for 1 phase. So for example, if your camp is a typical camp in the underground, it'll be Ob 4. If it's in a dangerous area near town, it's Ob 1. And then we're on to rituals. We are on to rituals. This is a good spot for me to take a quick break. So I think that's what we're going to do. Oh yes. So rituals are the holy magic in this game. And since I've already looked at this a little bit, I've got a sense of what's in there. And they're pretty cool. They're very inventory based again, just like the magic was. It's very Scandinavian, I would say. Yeah, I'm going to take us to the BRB screen, and we will BRB. I'm just going to go do a bio break, and then we will continue on with our next chapter. I will let the music continue though.